What's going on? Nick Tello here working with iZotope. Today is the day you've been waiting for. We're going to talk about hyperpop production and mixing. How to get those ridiculous vocal chains that sound like a chipmunk singing through a paper shredder. How to get those ridiculously distorted 808s that sound like someone dropped a bomb in your headphones. And also like what kind of production elements you should be choosing for your tracks. You know, like drums and synths that sound like they're kind of mad at you. Getting the right effects and, you know, overloading them a little bit, but not so much that it's over the top and just sounds completely out of pocket. And of course, one of the most important things, making sure all of this is in the pocket mix-wise so that it sounds hype, but not ridiculously bad. So for this video, I'm going to use one of my songs, and I'm going to hyper-popify it. Let me just play it real quick so you can hear what it sounds like.
Yeah, paid the fees, gave the keys, shut her all down and arranged a speech. Here's to getting gas too fast with no brakes. Throw her in the trash and hash the next play.
So yeah, you can kind of hear it's like a pop-punk song with trap drums and 808s. Very easy for me to hyper-popify. So we're going to start with the vocals. That's why the vocals are so loud right now, is because we're going to start with that. So the first thing you got to do is just make sure the vocals are in the pocket. So I'm just going to pull up Melodyne and just correct any notes that are just off pitch. So yeah, all you got to do, just make sure you hit transfer and then play it.
Yeah, paid the fees, gave the keys, shut her all down and arranged a speech.
So yeah, now you can go in and just fix any notes. So this line, for example,
throw her in the trash and hatch the next play.
I'll probably just tighten this up just a little bit. I usually just snap a lot of these into place because it makes my life easier, and we're gonna auto-tune it in just a second, so no need to get crazy with it.
Throw her in the trash and hatch the next play.
Yeah, that's a little bit better. Yeah, so don't go overboard with melodyning just because, like, the point of hyperpop, which is to just auto-tune everything to shit, so, like, check it out. So yeah, first we're gonna pull up Nectar Pro, and what you'll notice is the very first thing is pitch. I know the key is F sharp, so I'm gonna change it to that. Change it to major, F sharp. This, I mean, you kind of gotta have it, it's gonna correct based on like where you are. I'm just gonna do mid because it's a little bit of both. Like I go high and I go low. So I'm just gonna keep it on mid. So the speed is what determines like how quickly the notes like move around. So when the speed is all the way down, that's when you get that like effect. So I'm gonna bring the speed all the way down and you'll hear it pretty much immediately.
Yeah, paid the fees, gave the keys, shut her all down and arranged a speech.
Yeah, already like I feel like we're halfway there just from pitch correction. So a big part of where hyperpop gets its sound from is from these ridiculously distorted effects. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw iZotope Trash on here. I'm actually gonna do a little bit of multi-band distortion.
Here's to getting gas too fast with no brakes. Throw her in the trash and hash.
So I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna set this to Gentle Push. It's one of my favorites. So I'm probably gonna saturate the mid-range just a little bit. Bring the mix down slightly. And this is gonna fill out the mid-range a little bit, but I'm going to bring this down after the fact. So yeah, you can hear that it's saturating the mid-range, but I'm gonna bring the mix a little bit down because the trick with Trash is actually to bring the mix down, blend it in with your original signal. And then I'm gonna go to the top end and switch it to one of my favorites, which is Impaler. This is gonna sound quite ridiculous, actually. I'll probably drive the pre even more. Bring the mix down. What you'll notice is that it just sounds a lot more aggressive, a lot more upfront. You can also switch on the dynamics section. It has a built-in compressor, so I'll probably compress it a little bit in the Trash plugin itself. So now let's listen with and without Trash. Here's without it.
Yeah, paid the fees, gave the keys, shut her all down and arranged a speech.
Now here's with it.
Yeah, paid the fees, gave the keys, shut her all down and arranged a speech.
You can hear now we're starting to get that kind of hyperpop sound. So it's all about the distortion. It's all about the auto-tune plus the distortion plus the effects we're about to get into. So I'm honestly gonna add more distortion because I feel like I could be even more aggressive with it. I'm gonna head over to this crispy setting. And it's a little crazy, not gonna lie. So I'll bring the mix down, obviously. It is helping with a little bit more distorted top end, which I love. And I'm gonna compress it a little bit more in Trash as well. So here's without that Trash that I added. And then here's with the added crispy. It's a little bit grittier, and it's pretty much there. It's pretty much where I want it now in terms of like distortion. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to format shift it. This is very important. Hyperpop, they'll either do one of two things. They'll pitch the whole beat down, record their vocal over it, and then pitch it back up. And then when they pitch the vocal up to match what the beat is actually like in the key of, then their vocal will sound kind of like chipmunky and affected. The other way that you could do this is with format shifting. So in pitch, in Nectar, there's this little built-in format thing, and basically you can shift it up and it will sound quite crazy. I'm just gonna play it so you can hear it and kind of shift up and down. And then here's me going down with it. I'm sure this is starting to sound familiar to some of you. So I'll probably bring the scale all the way up, and then I'm probably going to go not too crazy with it. By the way, you can actually automate this stuff like up and down, and that's when you start getting into that, like, you know, really creative space with working with vocal effects. Now let's start talking about effects. So the first thing I'm gonna do is talk about delay. So the delay, let's see, I'm gonna send it to a bus. It's very important to put your effects on sends because you'll find that it's easier to like actually like affect your effects. So what I'll do is I'll throw the Nectar delay on here. So I already set this delay up to kind of how I want it. So basically, just to give you an idea, it is a quarter note on one side, eighth note on the other side, a little bit of grunge to it. Love that. And then just an EQ just to filter the delay. It's going to sound a little bit like this. Obviously, it is quite loud and out of pocket. We can't be having that. So what I like to do is I like to sidechain compress the vocal to a compressor that is on the delay. And you will see it will duck it down, which is beautiful because we don't want the delay to be in the way. We kind of just want it filling in the spaces where the vocal is absent. So check it out. So you can see it's compressing, it's ducking the delay down while the vocal is present, and then the trick is to have a long release time. That way it kind of creeps up when the vocal is not there. Then let's talk about reverb. So reverb is very important to any song. What I do is I have Neoverb here, and basically you kind of want to EQ it a little bit. You definitely want to EQ down the highs, I'd say, and I really like the plate setting for the vocals here, so check it out. The plate just sounds kind of like nice and full. There's no right answer for like what reverb to use in whatever case. You really just got to play with it. But the cool thing about Neoverb is you can kind of switch between like plate and hall and reflections, see which one you like and just sweep through. Yeah, plate just sounded right to me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down kind of a lot. All right, next let's talk about chorus. So chorus is very cool. It's a way to spread out your vocal a little bit, so check it out. What I have here is I have Nectar Pro doing a chorus. I'm going to turn this on, and then you will hear the chorus. It's actually low in the mix right now, but I'm going to bring it up so you can hear it. You know, you can kind of spread this out. You can have a chorus, flanger, phaser. Chorus is kind of just what I picked because it spreads it out in like a clean kind of way. And then I just blended it down into the mix a little bit. All right, next let's do something fun. We're going to talk about vocal synths. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up vocal synth real quick, and I'm going to play with some of this stuff because there's a lot of cool stuff with vocal synth that you can really just have fun with. Here's to getting gas too fast with no brakes. Throw around the trash and hash the next play. More to life than the lunch you paid. Sworn into a mission built on dumb luck. No one's due to listen till you come down. Pay the fees. You can kind of affect like how much of each one you want. So getting a blend is really subjective. There's no right way to do this, you know what I mean? So here's just the vocal synth. The trick to this and getting it to sit nicely in the mix is this knob right here. You can spread it out. So here's everything together. And of course, I'm just gonna blend it down into the mix a little bit.
no breaks. Throw it in the trash and hash the next play. Corporate craze, get the fuck away.
All right, more effects, more effects. Let's go. Dubware. All right, so I think this is the last one actually. So the iZotope Dubware. So this is a great plugin. It's free. Basically just like helps you create a more spread out vocal sound, which is great, especially when you're working with distorted vocals and you get a kind of like a crunchy top end in the sides, which is awesome, honestly, for your stereo image. So yeah, always I have this on Ascend and then I switch it to effect only. That way there's no dry signal. I turn the amount up all the way, the separation up all the way. The variation kind of gives it like, if you go too far with it, it'll sound kind of warbly or whatever, but like 20% is kind of a sweet spot that I've found. And then just bring the mix down. So now our vocal sounds quite ridiculous, honestly. We've kind of made it as far as like the effects, like we made it happen. And then here's something very controversial that I've done that I don't recommend everyone do because sometimes your computer CPU will get mad at you. But I like putting a limiter on my overall vocal chain and my effects because it kind of helps glue the mix together. So I have put Ozone on the vocal bus, on the overall all vocals plus vocal effects bus, and I have kind of cranked it a little bit. And what you'll find is that the vocal actually gets a little more tucked in. So as you can see, I'm kind of hitting like, you know, like over 5 decibels of gain reduction. I like having the transient emphasis on, actually, in this case, because it kind of helps the vocal punch through a little bit. Yeah, you hear it on those C's too. Character's kind of fast, you know, same idea as working with like vocal compression. You kind of just want like a fast acting compressor because it's going to help with transparency. So that's what I did. That's my crazy thing that I did. That is the whole vocal chain. Any questions? Just kidding. All right, so now we've covered the vocals. Let's talk about the 808. So the 808 is very important, but the main thing with hyperpop and 808s is the distortion. So check it out. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna throw trash on here. And yeah, I'm gonna pick this preset called Make Bass Rain. And let's hear it. So yeah, like with anything, obviously it sounds wild. I'm gonna dial this back a little bit. So let's talk about a couple production elements that you can actually add. So hyperpop is very like upbeat, but it also has very kind of like aggressive sounds, even like dubsteppy or like electronic sounding sounds. So one thing that I found that I could use, so here I loaded a break tweaker on this SM Trapped preset thing, and it's pretty easy to use, honestly. Like I literally just click on one of the keys and it just has this whole drum pattern play out. So obviously I don't want to include the synth because I already have like melodic elements that might clash with. So I'm just going to be doing the hi-hats for the first section. And then I'll bring in the snare for the second section. And then you can kind of like mute, like you can see I muted the sub kick here. And then like if I go to the snare, I like turned it down a little bit. And I believe I filtered it as well. Yeah, I turned the gain down and then I applied a little bit of a filter on it, because I didn't want to have too much low end because that would conflict with my main snare. So it added a little bit more of like a rhythmic texture to the kind of like second half of this verse. Check it out. I'm just gonna blend it into the mix just a little bit more. You know, you don't want it to be too busy, but it is nice. And the fact that it has these kind of like sweet drum patterns already programmed in kind of takes the hard, like tedious part of programming drums out of the picture. Next, I'm gonna add a synth. So I have iZotope Iris here, and I actually copied the MIDI from one of my other synths, and I found this really kind of like, almost like violent dubsteppy sounding synth, and it sounds like this. Let me just, so I picked this preset called Cutter, and it sounds like this. So it's almost like kind of like dystopian and anxiety inducing, but when you hear it in the mix, especially in the context of like trying to make like a hyper pop song, it sounds just right. Check it out. I'm gonna blend it into the mix a little bit more. Yeah, so that's just about right. So one thing that you'll find in a lot of hyperpop songs is they have like, you know, ways that they stutter their vocals. Like they'll chop up the first syllable of a word and then like copy paste it, maybe add like a filter. So Stutter, it kind of does that automatically. So what I'll do is I'll throw that on here. So the way I have this plugin set up is I actually have it automated on and off. I already set this up. So it almost sounds like a glitchy kind of vocal choppy, almost like freestyle type of like sound. I'll just play it so you can hear it. So you can see it's kind of crazy, but like it works in the under the right circumstances. You just have to tweak these parameters to how you like it. And that is it, my friends. That is how you approach creating a hyperpop banger, both from a production and mixing standpoint. The key to this genre is there are no rules. Literally just like whatever effects you have, you know, these iZotope plugins are amazing for this because like you saw, you know, things like Trash, Vocal Dubber, all that stuff. This is where you get to use those tools to their fullest potential and really just not care about having something sound organic or natural. So please, you know, check out the song, but more importantly, you know, try some of these effects on your own. Really just get creative, think outside the box, and I will see you soon.